This company was founded with the sole purpose of creating and delivering future mobility testbed facilities for simulating research, development, and innovation in the area of autonomous connected electric shared vehicles. Welcome to Future Mobility Ireland, and welcome to one more episode of Builder Nation. For today's agenda, we have Russell Vickers, CEO and co-founder at this company. So welcome, Russell. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, no problem. Nice to meet you, Lisa. Thanks. I'm happy to spend the time with you today. I'm an electronic engineer. That is my original background. I spent most of my career in semiconductor design. So working on microchips for companies like Intel, Ericsson, Texas Instruments. Moved into automotive during my time at Intel. So started working on autonomous vehicles. So that was part of the compute platforms that Intel were providing for autonomous vehicles, self-driving companies, and then moved into an automotive company then with Jaguar Land Rover. So Jaguar Land Rover established a software development center in Ireland in 2017, and I was part of the team that helped to set that office up. So spent a couple of years at Jaguar Land Rover, and then founded Future Mobility Campus Ireland, which, as you said, is a test bed for not only autonomous driving and electrification and vehicles, we're also looking at air mobility as well. So kind of looking at almost anything that moves.
Well, thank you so much for giving the explanation. Really interesting background, because I know that you also have an MBA in business. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did that during COVID. I realized we're a not-for-profit company and we were funded in the beginning of 2020. So that was just as COVID kicked off and we got our funding. And I realized I didn't know that much about how to start a company. So I said, okay, I'll take the time during COVID to try and learn some things. And it's been really helpful, to be honest. A lot of good skills that I learned from that, a lot of practical things to help. Because I think when you're a founder, you realize you end up doing things I didn't imagine I'd be doing before. So it's been very useful.
Totally. And I would like to dive deeper into your role, because I think that being a founder and also the CEO and also the engineer, I mean, especially in this industry, is really important to the development of the actual company. So what would you say it was the main challenge, talking on the hardware side and on the business side?
Yeah, I think on the hardware side, I'm definitely more of a hardware focused person. That's kind of what got me into engineering from the start. And I suppose throughout my career, I've kind of wanted to move closer to the customer, because when you're designing silicon chips, especially the level I was working at was like manipulating single transistors almost. So it's quite in the weeds when you're doing that. And then I wanted to kind of move closer to the products. So that's how I've been moving through my career. And what we're providing with the test bed is essentially a playground for different companies to come and develop the products. So you can see in the background here, we've got our test vehicle, which is a really nice Jaguar I-Pace. So we use that for our different customers to come and develop their hardware on that. So we've got different LiDARs and sensors like that. And then we're also working with companies that are working with these really nice drones. So for me, why we did this is because I wanted to kind of be involved with all of these aspects. And I'm not really involved with the deep technical stuff anymore, but that's kind of why we developed the test bed. And then the business side of it, I suppose I always wanted to found a company and to develop something, but never really knew how. And then you get older and then you realize you've got different commitments like family and kids, and it's not so easy to kind of work for free while you're developing your company. So the way we developed the test bed and developed this company was kind of based on that. We've had support from the government to be able to build the physical infrastructure that we have here today. That kind of reduced the risk for us personally, or for myself and the other co-founder personally, and then allowed us then to develop a platform where other companies can build products on top of what we have here, essentially. And then hopefully, from our point of view, we probably will end up developing our own products at some point as well.
I think it's amazing, and I think it's really new. And now that we're talking about it, I would like to ask you about how's the industry, that special industry in Ireland? How was that first like back in 2020?
From an automotive point of view, Ireland wouldn't have been really known on the map. But Ireland is really strong in technology, and there's a lot of companies, especially a lot of the US multinationals would have their European headquarters here. And there's a lot of skills in software development, big data analysis, AI, all of that sort of stuff. So what's happened is that automotive companies are trying to become tech companies. Basically now it's not about just developing the hardware anymore, which, well, we all love, but it's more about developing the hardware platform and then putting really great software on top of that. So that's kind of why a company like Jaguar Land Rover, for example, came to Ireland, because they wanted to get access to the people, to the skills, and also to the ecosystem that is here. It started to play to the strengths of what Ireland has. And that's kind of where the idea then for the test bed came to support to build that ecosystem even stronger.
I was looking through the website and I noticed that you collaborated with FedEx Express last year with drones. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. Just kind of the backstory of that. We got funded in 2020, and that was just when COVID was kicking off. In terms of like what's happening on the vehicle side behind us, in terms of autonomy and things like that, there was actually a big slowdown in investment at that time. So it wasn't really a great time to be starting a test bed focusing just purely on the road autonomy. So we also are based in Ireland. We're based on the West Coast in a place called Shannon, and there's actually a big airport here. So we started also looking at drones and air mobility for the main reason, one, we have got a major airport on our doorstep. And then the other piece of it then was there's so much overlap in terms of technologies that if you want to do autonomy on the road and autonomy in the air, there's a lot of, sensor overlap, the software, the data analysis, there's all of those areas. So that kind of led to, okay, let's start to look at what we can do in advanced air mobility and drones. And the one thing that we wanted to do was there was no point really looking at this area until we knew that we could really work with the Irish aviation, the regulators, to allow us to fly drones in Class C airspace. We're flying in the airspace of where the airport is. So that was the idea of the trial with FedEx. We wanted to show that we could do beyond visual line of sight flights from our vertiport here that we built at Shannon Airport, and then fly maybe something like 10, 15 kilometers over to a port doing FedEx deliveries essentially. So that really kicked it off. They got the airport on board, the air traffic controllers, the regulator. We're flying those drones in airspace with real commercial airliners taking off and landing. So the first part of the trial was maybe like 1-2 flights a day, but within about 3-4 weeks of the operation, we were probably flying like 15 flights a day, something like that. So it really started to prove how this could be viable to actually do this and do it safely. That then led to a European project. There's a lot of European funding for projects related to different research topics. And there's one topic we're working on. We're working in this with conjunction with Collins Aerospace and the regulator as well, in terms of how you manage this airspace going forward. Utopia or dystopia for some people would be like thousands more objects in the sky. But how do we manage those, and how do the air traffic controllers manage those objects? So there's a big push, not just in Europe, but across the world in terms of how you manage those objects. So we're leading a project. It's a digital sky demonstrator here, and it's basically like a 3-year pilot project to build the technology to allow drone companies to then rock up and then basically submit their flight plans and then start flying. And it's just started to lead to more exciting things as we go forward.
Wow, that's really exciting news that you're talking about. And that was actually one of my next questions. What will you say are the next steps? Are you guys planning on expanding anytime soon, or just staying in Ireland at the moment?
I think when we first came up with the concept of this, it's not like test beds don't exist across the world. I think what we were focusing on was more on the sort of the technology that would support a test beds. We don't have a big test track and things like that. So that was part of it. So I think what we've kind of learned as we've gone through the journey is that actually what we built is quite unique. So it is something that we're talking with other countries about how can we basically roll this out in other areas to really create this cohesive ecosystem, and also through not just maybe through what we do ourselves, but also through partnerships. So that's definitely one area we're looking at. And then we have plans to grow the facility. So this year we're looking to build a dedicated full-scale vertiport, which would support advanced air mobility operations. We're looking at that almost as a hub that we want to build to support the whole country. Ireland, we're quite a small country. So it actually lends itself quite well to things like advanced air mobility with air taxis and things like that. So we're looking to basically take the infrastructure that we're putting in place with how we manage the airspace and all that. And then we're basically adding in this infrastructure where we can have like real services in the next 5 years or something like that.
Wow, you guys are moving really quickly, especially since you started back in 2020. And I mean, you mentioned the pandemic and you mentioned kind of like the challenges in between. But I would like to ask you, I mean, you being the CEO, did you have any challenge talking about procurement back then?
Yeah, procurement's been the first year of the project was really just kind of planning phase of this. So we didn't really lose that much time during the pandemic, the first year of it at least. But then we were like, okay, now it's time to buy all the stuff, like all the infrastructure, and supply chain's been an absolute killer. We've ordered stuff. Some of the things that we've ordered still aren't installed yet. That's a small minority, but that's something that we really struggled with. But we've been two people essentially, and this project kind of is something that's in your head. And at least having some of those delays have given us a bit more time to reflect a bit more and let the technology see how they mature, for example. So some technologies that we were thinking of at the very start of the project, they've probably fallen a bit by the wayside. So that kind of delay has helped us in a bit because we've kind of been able to sit back and not panic about, yeah, we must have this, we must have that. So that was a good learning to kind of realize that and kind of listen to the customers because, again, this doesn't exist in Ireland. So then building this and then understanding what our initial customers wanted, that was really what we focused on, because then we'll build it towards our customers. And then as more customers come in, we'll figure out what we need to do then.
Talking about all of this process and supply chain with different companies, most of the engineers, they either like organize through a Google spreadsheet or they either have a software. So do you have similar process or do you have any specific software?
We're kind of too small, so we're just kind of using things like spreadsheets and just trying to figure out what we need to do. It kind of makes us a bit more nimble. I think now we're starting to put some processes in place for some of those areas. And to be honest, a big part of it as well is like how we're funded. We've been funded like 80% by government funding, and then the other 20% we raised just from partner companies. So companies like Jaguar Land Rover, Cisco, and these type of companies. And it's not just getting some funding from those type of companies. What you really get is the input from them to help with the architecture decisions that you need to make. So we built a smart city, right? And so that allows us then to basically deploy different technologies. So having big partners like that really helps you make some good decisions about the type of technologies that you want to deploy. So even though we've been a team of two, we've kind of had like a lot of people supporting us to kind of help make those decisions. It's beneficial for them as well as us, but it's worked really well.
It is. Partnerships are key to grow. So yeah, one of the last questions I would like to ask you from your perspective, where do you think the future of the industry is going?
As I said, we focus on a really wide range of things, both on air and on roads. So I think what we're seeing is definitely, it's a really interesting mix right now, because I think, I said something earlier about automotive companies are trying to become tech companies. And I think in terms of aviation, I think aviation companies, at least in advanced air mobility, are almost trying to become automotive companies because they need to scale their product in a completely different way to traditional aviation. It's not about just making a few hundred aircraft a year and you're trying to make thousands of these things. So what we're seeing is a kind of melting pot of all these different things coming together, whether it's looking at electrification of road or air vehicles. That's definitely an area that we're looking at, and things like hydrogen and how you feed into this economy. It doesn't really matter how the future pans out in a way. We're kind of hedging our bets. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're here ultimately to help companies design and develop products that will then fit into some of those areas. And there's going to be some winners and there's going to be some losers, and that's just part of tech, right? But from our point of view, we sit at that nice little layer where we can kind of watch and support what's going on. So it's pretty cool.
Totally, couldn't agree more. And last but not least, Russell, do you have any advice for future entrepreneurs or people starting on this path?
Now that I've done it and I'm a bit older, it's been tough and it's been challenging, but I don't regret it at all. And just to be sitting in here, that this was a deserted warehouse a couple of years ago, and now we're sitting here amongst all this, and we're starting to build the ecosystem. It's really fun for people that are thinking about it. You're going to learn from it no matter what. I think it's about the journey.
It is about the journey. Thank you for sharing that as well. And thank you for being here. Do you have any social media handles? Where can people find you or the company?
Yeah, people can just check us out at Future Mobility Campus Ireland or fmci.ie. And we're on LinkedIn and Twitter and all of those types of things. But you can follow what we're doing. We're pretty active in terms of sharing all the cool stuff that happens here at FMCI. So you just Google us, you'll find us.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And remember, guys, that you can also find more information, interesting articles, interesting interviews, just like this one with Russell, directly on our website, ControlHub.com/builder-nation. We would love to hear from you. And once again, Russell, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time. We really enjoyed having you today at Builder Nation.
No problem. It's great to speak to you.